All right, everybody. Here is the last step on creating your coil pitcher, making a spout. I've been working on the form for the last couple days, and now I'm just about at that final step. So I'm just smoothing out the outside and the inside of the wall on my last couple coils that I've attached. And notice that I'm trying to make sure that I spin the entire pitcher and try to keep my rib in one spot and slowly and carefully scrape away some of that excess clay that might be on the outside surface and on the inside surface. You have a couple maybe uneven areas on the rim. You might be able to take the straight edge of the rib and try to shave off a little bit of that clay before you start thinking about the final attached part, which is going to be the spout. We talked about a couple different choices with the actual spout. We talked about that in class, and right now I'm just kind of deciding what is going to be the front and the back of my pitcher. So we talked about making a slab, possible slab spout that you can attach to the outside wall, something like that, where you would it would be required that you'd have to remove a little bit of the clay on the inside, right around there, to make sure that you have a nice seam between the attached slab and the wall of the pitcher. Or the demo that I'm going to show you is how to create a spout with a small coil that kind of tapers on both sides. The goal here is to make sure that you have enough clay that's going to look similar in the middle to all the other coils that you've been rolling out for your wall, and then kind of deciding maybe the length of maybe a finger or so. The length of the coil should be about that far, and then both ends should taper in and kind of turn into a point. Okay, and so you can use the tabletop to help kind of even things out, but you should make the center of your coil about the same thickness as it's always been, and then the ends will taper in and come to a point. So they kind of flow into the actual rim and kind of disappear as you start to blend them in. So I'm testing it out, checking to see how it looks, and I want to make sure that it's in the front area of the actual pitcher, and then try to make sure that I have attached this the right way. You're going to measure just a little bit past the ends of each of the coils, and you're going to score that entire surface all the way around, and then also score the entire base or the bottom part of the coil that you're going to be attaching it to. Same technique as always, kind of a crisscross pattern. Scratch up that surface really well, make sure it's digging into the clay really well with the wire brush, and then you're going to take your slip and you're going to lay a layer of slip on the surface to make sure that you have a good layer of glue basically between the two pieces of clay. Compress the coil down and kind of compress it right onto the rim first before you do any kind of sliding down with your thumb, just to guarantee a good strong connection between the two pieces of clay. And as you start to work, you're going to notice that the middle part of your coil is going to be a little bit thicker and a little bit taller than the rest of it, and that's the whole point. You want to try to make sure that you're leaving a little bit of clay right in the middle, so eventually that will stretch out and become the spout that you're going to be looking for at the end of this result. I'm just carefully making sure that the seam is getting blended in really well. It's hard to see with my hand kind of back and forth, but I'm just working on that seam and making sure that the coil doesn't move around too much, and then I'm going to go on the inside and use my thumb, supporting it with the outside hand or outside part of my hand with my fingers so it doesn't slide around and move around while I press the coil down and slide it down with my thumb. So you shouldn't see too much of a seam. If you do, blend it in some more. Hold it from the side and look at it from the side and blend it in some more. Because next is going to be pinching the coil and making it a little bit thinner where that thick area was in the center of that coil. Now you're stretching the clay out back and forth, and if you have any cracks on the surface, you want to make sure that you get a little bit of water, smear over the surface, and then compress the clay again with your fingers before you start stretching it out even more. Now the goal here is to make sure that you can actually stretch the clay and you need to have water on the surface before you do that. What I'm doing now is basically sliding my fingers up from the base of that coil and stretching the clay out and making sure that it doesn't stick to my fingers. You want to make sure there's enough water on it so it kind of creates this kind of slick surface that you don't want to grab onto your skin. If it does, you have the possibility of probably ripping off some of the clay, and you might have to start over with a whole new coil. So be careful about the amount of pressure you use and also the amount of water you use. You want to make sure that it does stay kind of slick the entire time that you're trying to shape the actual spout. Now, when you start doing this, you're going to start blending in all the areas where the connection was at, and you want to make sure that you're kind of smoothing things out in different directions, because you'll notice sometimes you'll leave finger marks that are going vertical up and down, and you want to get rid of some of those, so you got to move your thumbs and your fingers across those so they start to eliminate some of those weird uneven bumps. Now, basically have the overall shape. I've kind of stretched the clay and pushed it down on the tip there, on the rim, and it's become a lot thinner, and you can see how there's a nice curve to it. And now you're just kind of finalizing the shape. So I'm kind of caving in the walls a little bit more, kind of pushing them in so there's a nice basically a nice channel that we're looking down to make sure that the liquids that's inside this pitcher will pour out properly. So I'm kind of folding it back. I'm taking a very light touch because the water has softened this clay quite a bit. Sometimes it's good to let this clay firm up, like leave it alone, let it sit out for a little while. That actual spout will firm up pretty quickly because it's been thinned out quite a bit. And then you can come back with a sponge and then with your fingers again with a little bit of water, and you can smooth out any imperfections that you might see on the outside and on the inside of that spout. Just trying to even out the rim while it's still soft before it starts to dry out too much. And that's about it. All right, good luck.